All right, hello everyone. My name is Colton Cockrell. I am a certified financial fiduciary and independent financial advisor with Share McKinley Group. So I'm here today with a good friend of mine, Mr. Billy Wayne Nesrsta. He is a agency owner of Goosehead Insurance. Now I do have to make a quick disclaimer here, or disclosure. There's like a lot of chaos going on right now, dogs barking, stuff like that. So just bear with us. All right, we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna answer some questions about property and casualty. It's gonna be fun, but there might be some barking. Okay, so Billy Wayne. Really, real quick, I want you to kind of tell people about you, who you are, why you became an independent
Yeah,
insurance agent.
yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, Billy Wayne Nesrsta here, like Cold said, agency owner, Goosehead Insurance. I've been in the insurance business going on about 8 years now. The last 3 have been with Goosehead as an independent agent. Reason, independent. I worked for a captive captive company several years prior to becoming an independent, and just the options. Not having to tell anybody no, having multiple options for pricing, and just coverages and different things like that is the reason I'm in the seat I am today.
And that's why I like working with you, Billy Wayne, because you are also independent. I'm independent as well. It's just you have better options, more products that you can service your clients with, and that's fantastic. So really, I just wanted to get you here. It's noon right now. We're grabbing a cup of coffee, and we're just gonna ask you a few questions about P&C or property and casualty. So we're gonna go ahead and jump right in. All right. So first things first,
Sounds
and
good.
these might sound kind of weird. Some of these
Okay.
are random, but I got questions from people from Facebook, and just I was asking other people just independently any questions they had for PNC guys. So I hope I don't throw you off with some of these questions, but we'll see what happens.
Oh
All right,
boy.
here we go.
All right, sounds good.
So first things first, and I actually kind of hear this quite often. So if I have an older vehicle, do I need to carry full coverage on it?
There's not a definitive answer on that. It is kind of a personal, case per person. I always recommend, if let's say if you had the vehicle and it was only valued at, $4,000 or $5,000, and you were to be in an at-fault accident and it were to be totaled out, would you miss that $4,000 or $5,000 to then turn around and put down on another vehicle? If that person says, well, I've got plenty of money, then, hey, let's drop the comprehensive at collision. If no, I really would need that money, let's spend the extra $150, $200 a year, or more, it could be, to carry the comprehensive and collision coverage. So it's very much on a case-by-case basis.
Mhm. And so I know that we're kind of getting into hurricane season right now. So let's talk about flooding. I know 2017 we experienced a pretty significant flood. So flood
Yeah.
zones, are they being remapped? Are there any changes that are being made this year?
Yeah, they're being pretty much daily. They're FEMA. They being FEMA is kind of taking it subdivision by subdivision and even house by house. I've seen it to where a neighbor right down the street is in a high velocity flood zone where 3 or 4 houses down they could be in an X zone, which is a preferred zone. So yes, it is rapidly changing. People that have been in a preferred X zone, which is a non-flood standard non-flood zone, supposedly, are now becoming in flood zones. And they've never had to carry flood insurance because they didn't want to. But now their mortgage companies are forcing them to carry because they are becoming in flood zones, and some of those premiums aren't very pretty. I mean, if they had a loss in Harvey, and maybe they had a loss way back in Allison, which was forever ago, I know, but once a property's tagged with two losses, it can get pretty expensive.
Wow. And so FEMA's the one that draws these lines.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I didn't know that. So now this is another question. So I hear a lot about people talking about umbrella policy. So can you kind of talk about what an umbrella policy is, and do you need to have one?
I highly recommend, if you own your own home, or even if you rent and you have a high income, I always recommend that you have here we are, umbrella policy. What an umbrella policy does for you is it is overlining liability coverage. So let's say you're in a auto accident and it's a several car pileup and you have maybe a fatality or something like that, and you're at fault and you only have $500,000 of liability coverage on your auto policy. Then the umbrella policy would kick in to whatever limits you had, million, 2 million, 3 million, whatever you choose. And that's also very important for a homeowner, especially if you have like a pool or something of that nature where there's a lot more risk involved. But they're fairly cheap as long as you don't have a bunch of underage drivers and a ton of vehicles or rental properties. You can get away for a couple $100 a year for $1 million in coverage. So
is it just vehicles?
Very
or
reasonable, and I feel it's very necessary.
And so, but it's a catch-all, right? It's not just for vehicles. It's
no,
really
so basically it's an correct.
Sorry, say it again. I lost you.
Correct. There. So when you think of an umbrella, you put all of your items underneath. So boats, it's an umbrella. So you just think you cram everything underneath. So when it's raining, out of liability money, I don't know what to call it, but everything's covered under there. So your boats, motorcycles, your homes, if you have rental property, like I said, it can all be covered under that umbrella policy. And it also follows you anywhere in the world. So if you're overseas and cause a liability issue, then it follows you there as well.
Okay, nice. I think I lost your screen there for a second. I'm glad to have you back.
Yep.
It like disappeared on me. So now this is a funny question here, but it was asked. So I can't even really get it out. So do I need coverage on my golf cart, or is that covered under my home insurance policy?
So there's a big misconception that golf carts are covered under your home policy, and they are, but only if they are being used as a service vehicle to your property. So a lot of in the areas we live in, there are golf course communities, and people are buzzing around on those things like crazy everywhere. Yes, you definitely need at least liability insurance on that golf cart policy. Real easy to throw somebody out, real easy to pull out in front of somebody. So always a good idea to have some liability insurance on a golf cart. Technically, it is covered under your home, but only on your premises.
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
And so tell me, because we're talking about, flood insurance, umbrella policies, we're talking about premiums. How are premiums determined? How are they calculated?
Well, the actual rating for the policies are set by each individual state. So as far as, percentage of dollars. Now for actual premium, let's just take an auto policy, for example. I mean, they say 1,200 different factors. I don't know how they could come up with that, but obviously your age, your driving record, if you've the safety of your vehicle, which comes off the VIN number, if it has brakes that lock up when somebody's in front of you, and believe it or not, credit is becoming a huge part of most insurance rates, not only on your home but your auto. So unfortunately, if you have poor credit, it's more than likely going to affect your auto and your home rates with a lot of companies.
That's interesting. So, okay, yeah, because premiums, that's like what everyone wants to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, because I hear this too every once in a while. So if you had your own business and you use your personal vehicle for transportation or deliveries or whatever, do you have to have a commercial policy on your vehicle?
So that's another yes and no type of question. There's certain businesses where, like, if you're just running the bank deposit down to the bank for your boss or whatever, then no. But if it's going to be used frequently for errands, things like that, most definitely. Realtors, like if you're transporting clients to go look at showings in different houses, yeah, you need to be in a commercial vehicle. If you're a pizza delivery guy and you're using your own vehicle, there are some endorsements that can be added now where those used to not be available. that allows that. Real common and popular now is Uber and Lyft is the other one. Those are endorsements that can be added to your personal policy to allow you to do Uber and Lyft. So it's slowly evolving as we are getting more and more into this ride sharing and deliveries and grocery delivery and all that. So yeah, commercial policy is always recommended, just to protect your personal assets if something were to happen. But there are endorsements that can be added to your personal as well.
Okay. And so let me ask you this, because insurance changes every year. Your premiums will vary. When or how often should you shop your P&C insurance?
I would say at least every 3 to 5 years. A lot of these companies, when you first write it, they're giving you a pretty healthy discount to, like a newcomer discount. But that slowly starts going away. Year two, it's a little smaller. Year three, it's even smaller than that, than year two. So I would say every 3 to 5 years. I mean, it's very much the same as, anything you subscribe to, like your direct TV or whatever. You get a great deal when you first come in, and then it starts going up and up, unfortunately. So longevity is really not doing you any good in the insurance business anymore. They used to tell you to pick a company and stick. Well, that's not the case anymore.
Okay, interesting. Now we're gonna get to some Facebook questions here. I had a friend,
Cool.
Erin. Yeah, I know, and I'm gonna read this to make sure I don't misquote her here. So,
Yeah.
how much auto insurance should I have? And then in parentheses, I understand the minimums for the state, but my understanding is that is not adequate.
It's going to depend. There's several questions that can be asked during an auto conversation. What do you have to protect as far as assets? Um, you know, just, I mean, if you make more than X amount of dollars, I mean, if you make $65,000-$70,000 a year, and let's say you're in an at-fault accident and you only carry the state minimums, which is 30,000 per person, 60,000 per accident, and 25,000 in property damage. Um, and let's say you're in an accident and you cause $100,000 in damage, you only have $60,000 in coverage. So you're on the hook potentially for $40,000 that you could potentially have to pay. So it's a conversation I always have. A lot of people ask me, why do you need to know how much I make for auto insurance? Just give me the minimums. Well, here's why. So it is very much on a case by case. If your agent, I'm not going to say if your agent's good or not, but if they know what they're doing, they will have these conversations with you.
Okay. And then there's so Judy asks this, what's a PUP, a PUP?
I think she meant PLUP, and that is the personal umbrella policy, personal liability umbrella policy
Got
that
it.
we discussed.
Okay. We discussed it. So let me go to the next question. This comes from Erica. Of course. Do you sell health insurance?
I do not, and I'm very, very grateful that I do not.
I think
That's
she's
a big
actually
mess.
she's a health advisor. So of course
Oh,
she's
okay. Yeah, no. I used to dabble in that a little bit with a previous company, and most definitely not.
Okay. Well, let me jump to this is the last question here. This comes from another Aaron. What is the coolest new product, service, or technology going on in your industry right now?
The coolest new technology. What? So, okay. Here, so right now there is, all the ride sharing. We've already mentioned all that. I think it's cool that they're allowing you to do that in your vehicle with different endorsements and things. But also, they are starting to, and people look at it the wrong way, in my opinion. There's small devices that can be installed in your vehicle, and they stay in your vehicle roughly 90 days. And some companies, they track acceleration, braking, how many miles you drive, what time of the day you drive, how many left-hand turns you make versus right-hand turns. And then some companies are just strictly mileage. And based off of, all this knowledge that the companies are gathering, they're producing discounts. And those discounts can be fairly large. I think just on my vehicle alone, I save about 18%. And that's not off the top of my premium, but it's certain coverages. So a little bit may go towards collision, a little bit may go towards uh, comprehensive, whatever coverages they come off of. But what I really think is going to be interesting is, I think here in the next 5 to 10 years, you're only going to have to pay for what you use. Like, if why should you, Colton, if you work from home every day, you never leave your house, you go to the grocery store, that type of stuff, why should you have to pay the same amount of premium as somebody, that drives 15 to 18,000 miles a year? So I think there's going to be eventually a company that's going to come out and kind of, you pay for what you use type. There's some out there currently that are, they're pooling. I don't necessarily want to say the company name, but they're actually taking on X amount of clients from X amount of from certain areas, and you're still paying a premium, but it's much less, and they are keeping the money pooled for, let's say there's 50 drivers in that pool. Well, that's all well and dandy, but if one of those 50 people has a major accident, there's not enough money in that pool to cover what it is. So there's some people starting to do it, and there's some companies starting to do it. I'm not a firm believer in it yet, but I do think that's where we're headed.
I've heard that with health insurance and a few other insurance
Yeah.
companies, that pooling of money. And so that leads me up to kind of a follow-up question there with, you mentioned the thing that you plug into your car. Is there negatives for having that?
Some companies, it's not a neg. So basically, they give you an upfront discount, whether it be 5 or 10%, just for installing it. It won't hurt you, but it can take away that 5 or 10% discount. So if you're, heavy foot and you're gassing it all the time and slamming on the brakes and driving like crazy, it won't make your premium worse than where you started, but it can start eating into the discount that they give you up front.
Okay,
Does that make
that
sense?
makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. And this is a personal thing that I've recently experienced. I recently switched my property and casualty. I wonder who. And in doing so, I was informed that I was not covered for underinsured or overinsured or non-insured motorists. So can you kind of explain the importance of having that on your policy?
Yeah, so I haven't seen the latest statistic, but last year in the state of Texas, they were saying that 1 in every 7 drivers are either uninsured, which they have nothing at all, or they're underinsured, which would mean, like we discussed earlier, they have the state minimum liability limits. Um, there's always been the argument, well, if I have collision on my policy, then I'm covered no matter what. And that is correct, but you may have $1,000 collision deductible, and then that is going to show up on your claims report as an at-fault accident if it's under collision. Your underinsured motorist coverage, it also provides health coverage for you if that you hit somebody that didn't have insurance, and it has a built-in $250 deductible, so less out of pocket. I always recommend it. I mean, it's not nearly as expensive as your liability coverage or your collision, so it's very minimal when you break it down monthly to what it costs.
Well, Billy Wayne, you can definitely tell that you've had long years of experience in the insurance industry. So I appreciate you taking the time, coming out, answering questions. And then really last thing, do you want to go ahead and just kind of give your information real quick, just in case someone has a question or wanted to reach out or interested in shopping their insurance, how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, Billy Wayne Nesrsta, agency owner, Goosehead Insurance. My email is very long. It's billywayne.nesrsta@goosehead.com. I'm sure you probably don't know how to spell Nesrsta, but not too many Billy Waynes out there. You can probably get away with just typing that in. And my direct line, 713-882-5758. And right now is a great time to shop. There's lots of things going on in the real estate market. We're finally getting back with the pandemic and all that. So great time to shop. And, I've really got some good carriers producing some good rates right now. So.
Awesome. Well, Billy Wayne, thanks again for coming out. Thanks for joining my little coffee break.
Yes,
And
sir.
I guess I'll be seeing you around. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, Colton.